Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of SPAG Dialogue, a series of online events brought to you by PR and advocacy experts, SPAG, in association with Reputation Today. A warm welcome to all our panelists and the 90+ registered participants who have logged in today using Zoom. This session is also being live streamed on our YouTube channel, bit.ly Reputation Today on YT. So if you're facing any issues with Zoom, you may switch to YouTube without the option of asking questions, of course. For all those who are attending using Zoom, please feel free to ask the questions using the Q&A box. Please avoid using the chat box for this. Before we introduce our panelists, let me remind you the hashtag for today is Policy Dialogue. Please tweet your learnings, thoughts, and ideas about the series using the hashtag Policy Dialogue. And don't forget to tag SPAG Asia and Rep Today Mag. I would now like to welcome our panelists for today. Garima Singh, Head for Government Affairs at Mondelez, India. Ishteyaque Amjad, Vice President, Public Affairs, Communications and Sustainability at Coca-Cola India and Southwest Asia, and also President of the Public Affairs Forum of India, that's PAFI. Pankaj Mahajan, Director Corporate Affairs for Cargill India. And moderating the panel discussion today is Aman Gupta, co-founder and managing partner, SPAG. Over to you, Aman, now to steer this conversation ahead.
Thank you, Anubhuti, and welcome everyone to this, I would hope, a very, very interesting conversation. I think let's start from sort of, just setting the context. The food and the nutrition industry, as we all know, is one of the largest and the diverse industry in India. And also, if we just look at from the way it is growing, it's sort of supposed to grow a lot. And when we know that any industry which is growing, it comes with its own set of opportunities and challenges. And with that requires a strong policy ecosystem. What I'm hoping to do over the course of the next 40 minutes and remaining 20 minutes for Q&A is to really converse with you and deliberate with you what kind of industry opportunities exist, what is really being done by the industry, and what kind of role do you think the government and the policymakers can really play in building this industry and make it ready for the future. Let's start from trying to understand from a consumer perspective. Now, consumer, as we know, is becoming much more informed, he's becoming much more sensitized, is becoming much more educated, especially around its food and nutrition needs. And there, again, within that, you have a diverse set of consumers, from a consumer which has a global aspirations, who travels, who wants to ensure they have access to everything which their counterparts across the world may have, to another set of consumer which is really looking at nutrition from an affordability and accessible side of it. Now, with that kind of a diversity across industry, across the consumer, Ishteyaque, I want to sort of start from you. One of the key aspects which really has come, because it's an essential item, it's a very high involvement item, when you look at food and nutrition. And trust plays a very, very critical role when it comes to, the food per se as a category. So from an industry perspective, what is the current relationship between, say, the brands and the consumer when it comes to the trust, and what is being really done right now by industry, as well as by the government, to really build in that kind of a trust amongst the consumer that what they are going to have is something which they can really trust from the consumption perspective.
Thank you, Aman. And good evening, everybody. Let's look at it, this in the current scenario. Whenever you're faced with a crisis, actually trust becomes a very, very important aspect. There's nothing that matters more during crisis than the trust or faith that you have in whatever, whether it is a brand, a relationship, or the ecosystem in which you are a part of, whatever. I think, our journey, particularly in last about 10 to 15 years, particularly in the area of food and beverages, has been extraordinary. The entire, setting up our food safety authority as a regulator, and the way this has come about, the kind of interfaces it has had with the industry, for example, various stakeholders, been a commendable journey, to be honest. I often joke about this fact that what we have as a food safety and standards authority today, or the act which has given rise to this authority, used to be the PFA, Prevention of Food Adulteration, in the olden days. Now, when you have a regulator which says you will do adulteration and I will prevent you from doing so, that relationship is not based on trust. So I think this entire journey of having right standards, bringing it at par with the global standards, the best practices, also taking cognizance of what are the unique challenges that a country like India really faces. And you very well articulated that. Think about it. India probably is the most diverse country on this earth, right? Not in terms of just our cultural, linguistics, cuisine diversity, but also the diversity of socio-economic stratas in which we are all divided. India has probably a very small chunk at the top, which is, as you've mentioned, value seeker global population. Then we have a large part of what we can probably call as the set of people who are aspiring to get into that top notch, and they are very well placed and they are very well fed in terms of their socioeconomic needs. And then we have a very large chunk of aspirers who are knocking at the door of getting into the middle class or upper middle class and all of that. And for each of these part of India, this trust and the value propositions for a brand means very different things. Now, in a scenario like today, where health and economy is the combination that has posed the challenge of COVID-19, I think one of the most important things is actually having the right kind of functionality and right kind of nutrition, but at the same time having that at an affordable price. Because it's easy for people to get supplements and many other things, but at the end of the day, for a person who's there on the road and a daily wage laborer or somebody who earns a very limited money, what kind of affordable nutrition can be provided? And this is one of the areas where we, at least as Coca-Cola, have been investing a lot in the last few years. The other important aspect of COVID-19 is that it has certainly thrown open one very, very important aspect. It is the importance of immunity, for example. Think about it. The fact that we are the third largest infected country in the world, and our cases are rising with the highest intensity. We still do not have a very high fatality. Our recovery rates are better than the rest of the world. And one of the reasons why this has been so is because we have a lot of inherent immunity and we have a much younger population. Now, how do we really, continue to work around that? Again, that nutrition, functionality, and immunity at an affordable price is an important aspect. So I think, if you really ask me, I think we're moving in the right direction. I think there's a good ecosystem between regulator, food manufacturers, consumers, the watchdogs, the civil societies, and all of that. And I think we're all committed to that.
Thank you, Ishteyaque. And I think you did talk about the safety part, but also I think the one more aspect which consumer build the trust is from a transparency aspect of it, in terms of how transparent are we in terms of from an information. And therefore, I want to sort of come to you, Garima, that in today's world where, as we said, the consumer is informed, is educated, irrespective of the diversity, they want to really know that, what am I really consuming? So does that put any kind of an additional pressure, or do you think from an industry perspective, providing the information is now a kind of a necessity? Because if you want to ask consumer to take an informed decision, being more transparent and ensuring that leads to trust and the aspect of the safety is kind of a must to do. And if that's happening, then what kind of steps is the industry taking? And do you think there's a role which the regulator has to play in that particular space?
Great. Thanks, Aman, and good afternoon, everyone. I'll begin with the basic foundation, which is trust. So essentially, if you see, trust forms the basis of every relationship, be it as a family or a consumer or with the government, and definitely with our consumers. So this trust is essentially, it is a everyday and every minute work, which is built by developing the core values of how we work every day. I'll give you, like, for example, in Mondelez, we build trust with our consumers through essentially sticking or adhering to three core values, which, work hand in hand. The first one is the love for our consumers and the brand. The second is growing every day. Now, these two critical values uh, would fall flat if we do not simply do our third value, which is to do what's right. Now, each of us at Mondelez, has this responsibility to do what's right, and I bold and underline it, by following legal and all compliance requirements and respecting our consumers, our customers, our business partners, regulators, government, fellow colleagues, everybody. Now, though it may look like a second nature, but it takes conscious effort and a strong commitment by each one of us to do always and do what we say we are going to do, and then do it the right way. And now circling back to the question here, now this builds the trust with the consumers and every stakeholder in the entire ecosystem. Now, if we say today, and I'm proud to say Mondelez today is one of the largest snacking company in the world, it's not just by virtue of its iconic brands and products, but also the trust we have built with our consumers and stakeholders over decades. So now the second point I recollect you did mention about giving as much information as one can to the consumer about a product. Now, I would say giving too much information on the pack, if you mean that way, will, I would see it as, will confuse the consumers and perhaps will not support him in taking the right decisions. Now, we have to support the consumer and really not confuse him by overloading him with information. Now, providing top level information is a must, which is even today available on all our products. And here I would bring in the trust piece. Trust plays a big role. If over the years you have built that trust in your brand, then consumer perhaps will not really try to find as much information or details on the pack. Like they will just go by Cadbury. If they want to have, chocolates, it is Cadbury. So that is the, my understanding of my consumers and how it plays around.
Thanks, Garima. And I think, I think as all of us who are communicators do understand the fact that over a period of time, as you communicate and as you engage with your different stakeholders, including consumer, each step which you take is towards building that relationship, which is standing on the trust, on this, on a certain aspect that I believe in this particular brand. And that belief system is what leads to preferences coming from taking the label part in terms of how much information needs to be shared, what kind of an information. I want to sort of come to you, Pankaj, here, that from an industry perspective, what if you can tell us in terms of what is the current thought process which exists around the packaging aspect, what kind of information is currently provided. And I'm also looking from a nutritional side of it, because one aspect of the food is in terms of what are we consuming, but within the food, what are the nutritional elements which are there. And from an industry perspective, what do you think is the future of that policy ecosystem, or what kind of information do you think would be available to the consumer in the coming years, both as kind of provided by the industry as well as something which the regulators might be asking for?
Thanks, Aman. Hi, everyone. Let me, before diving into the label thing, let me just take a step back. As Ishteyaque rightly pointed out, that this pandemic has really put the focus back on health as well as personal hygiene and sanitation.
There's a bit of an echo from your side, so I don't know whether it's just me or is it there.
Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of an echo there. I don't know if everybody else is okay, but yeah, let's sort of continue. If it sort of is too much, then I'll come back again.
I think we can all go on mute.
Yeah.
Let's everybody go on mute, then it will be okay.
Go ahead, Pankaj.
Or shall we stop my video also? Okay, let me just continue. So what I was trying to highlight is that food industry, especially the package industry, plays an important role in reinforcing the food safety and hygiene practices, especially in the wake of COVID-19. And now, we have talked about trust. So why there has been the mistrust? If you really look back, what has happened is that earlier, the food used to come, from nearby places. Now, given the complexities of the food supply chains, which has increased due to globalization, people have lost connection with where the food is coming from, which has resulted in some kind of trust deficit and has put focus on transparency as well as safety. Aman, you rightly pointed out that today's consumers are well educated, widely traveled, and they are very much aware of the information or the access to information to make choices. They're also very concerned about the safety as well as sustainability. That's something which is becoming important for consumers in terms of taking decisions. Now, one of the important ways of the industry, to communicate transparently and inform customers is through labels and packaging. And FSSAI has very clear packaging norms which require the industry to clearly mention the list of ingredients, nutritional information, license numbers, customer care number, so forth, so on and so forth. However, I would say the label as well as packaging and marketing is largely a function of product offerings. So what as a product you are offering, you ideally would want that to be reflected on the label. Therefore, I think it's more important for us to really look at the product or the core of it, which is the product. And which entails a lot of other activities which goes behind it, including market research, innovation development, test marketing, how and where the companies are sourcing their ingredients from, what kind of a production processes they are encompassing, then marketing, sales, and distribution, right? And all of this comes together to ensure that companies are able to offer more nutritious products and are giving a choice to the consumers. Let me just give you one example about Cargill, and this is in 2008 when we took a decision to fortify all our consumer packed edible oils with vitamin A and D. I don't need to tell you about the malnutrition condition in the country. 14% of our population is undernourished, and we contribute close to about 25% of the global undernourished population in the world. So we took a decision at that point of time to fortify our edible oils with vitamin A and D, and this was a beautiful example of how one can address a larger social cause and tie it with the business objective. It obviously meant that there were cost increases, and we needed to change the production processes. We needed to come out with new marketing campaigns which were easy to understand from a consumer standpoint. We obviously initially didn't really pass on any of the increased cost to the consumers. But again, an example how companies took upon themselves to, innovate and come out with a new product formulation to provide choices to the consumers. And we didn't stop with it. We really, worked along with the regulators. We worked along with the civil society, NGOs, even some of the leading chambers of commerce to create awareness about fortification with the industry as well as with the consumers. So I think it's a joint effort which needs to be done to provide much more transparent and safe products to the consumers.
Thanks, Pankaj. I think that was interesting, and I think we do need to work with your audio because there was a bit of an echo, but I did not want you to stop you there. But just taking it from where you said, you talked about the innovation which Cargill has done, especially in the food fortification side of it, and I think that's one. But as I was sort of reading somewhere, and it might be just that particular article, but it did say that there is not enough research which is happening in the food space, and we believe that innovation in this space is something which is a necessity. I think there is a also looking at from the diversity of Indian population. If you're really looking at from an affordable nutrition part of it, I think last year I attended a seminar around food and nutrition, and we had different stakeholders which sort of looked at that there is a possibility for us to come out with food which is coming from the Indian system. So if I'm really looking at from a state space, there are certain food innovation which could be really be done. So I want to come to you, Ishteyaque, here in terms of how do you really see the innovation in the food and nutrition space happening? Pankaj gave one example, but do you think this is an area which will continue to further build upon? Companies will continue to innovate and really do some big innovation, and is the regulatory ecosystem providing that kind of a support for companies to innovate?
So that's an interesting question. Let me bring this little bit of realism to this. When you look at food and beverages, this is such a fundamental and basic necessity of human being that expecting a out of this world innovation is probably not the best thing to do. All innovations in food and beverages are big because they are big in the sense that it caters to a very fundamental need of hunger and thirst and hydration and all of that a human body needs. This is one act that right from our evolution into a human being, we've always been indulging into eating and drinking something, right? It started, in fact, I take a lot of pride in saying that I represent the beverage industry. We learn to drink first before we learn to eat. So that's the fundamental part of it. I think what has happened in last few years is that there was a time when we were growing up, the choices were very limited, right? We had very little packaged food available. We had very little choices. As a result of which, anything that was alien, anything that was foreign, anything that came from the outside world, from in the milieu in which you live, was considered better. Imported was considered better at that point in time. If you remember, we all grew up with our cousins and uncles coming from the foreign lands, giving us a Mondelez chocolate, then Cadbury chocolates or whatever, and we would feel great about it. A bottle of Coke or something. Then slowly and gradually, the world became flat, right? There was a seamless transportation of ideas, production, brands, offerings, products, and everything. Now, I think we are now at a stage, and you referred to this in a very interesting manner. We've reached a stage where it is considered that what is local and what is hyper local is even better. That's where we've started to move more towards organic, local, neighborhood farm and whatnot. Today, all of us grew up taking a can with us and going and taking the milk every morning from the local whatever place from where we would get the milk. Today, if that milk is available to you, that is available at a premium as against a packaged milk which comes through a normal channel distribution. So I think there's a lot that has happened in that area, and which I think is a positive development. let me give you a few examples what is happening in India. And that's the reason why I'm saying there's a lot of innovation that's happening. Unfortunately, they would not really come back to people in such a manner that as if they are life-changing. You know, when we started to indulge ourselves in the strategy of local and hyper-local, I'll give you an example of our two brands, Minute Maid and Maaza. Maaza is the leading mango drinks in the country. I mean, this the market leader. Now, Maaza typically has a certain ingredients of mangoes that really makes it very, very special. Alfonso and others. Now, if you start really double clicking in India's consumer behavior, a consumer in UP loves the taste of dasari mango, while a consumer in Tamil Nadu likes the taste of Neelam mango. Both are mango, both could be mango. It can actually come down to that level where, you know, the mango drink that you serve in Gujarat is kesar, that one that you serve in, say, Bengal is langda, the one that you serve in some other parts of the country is different. And that really is an idea through which a consumer can connect better with you. That's number two. You know, I mean, and this has been a journey that we started about 4 or 5 years back. We call ourselves a total beverage company, where we realize that the hydration needs of a human being is far too many. I mean, as I'm speaking to you, I'm sipping my cup of coffee. Somebody is having a glass of water. Somebody is having a fruit juice. Many of us would have in the afternoon our lovely Cokes and Fantas and Sprites and whatnot. So there is so much of need of beverages that every consumer really needs. Now, how do we really, you know, coming back to the same concept of affordable nutrition, we launched a very interesting product called Aquarius Glucocharge. This is a 10 rupee pack, a small tetra pack, 10 rupee. It has got about 200 ml of liquid. And that beverage has got glucose, it has got fruit juice, it has got minerals, and it does a little bit of a hydration plus, enhanced hydration for somebody who toils in the sun. Now, if you really look in, unlike a COVID situation, 90% of our population actually toils in the sun. Very few of us really work in an air-conditioned environment. And majority of our country is always in some sort of a summer situation. You know, I mean, except for the northern part of India, we don't really have a very good winter in the rest of the country. So for a country like this, a solution which is so much focused on hydration, so much, you know, focused on nutrition, these are the kind of innovations we are doing. And these are the kind of innovations which are right for a country like India, where you can actually get some of these important ingredients at an affordable price.
Thank you, Ishteyaque. And, you know, and as I said, innovation in any form is an innovation. It cannot just be a product innovation. You touched upon the COVID-19, and I think all of us, you know, on this call, you know, from attendees to everybody, all of us are used to this new whole thing of, you know, virtual meet as we are doing right now. I don't think 6 months back we would have envisioned something like this happening. And I think you know, one of the big challenges when we had the COVID-19 and the whole quarantine and the lockdown which started, and I want to come to you, Garima, because and then circle back to both Pankaj, you and Ishteyaque. The food and nutrition, the food, as we all know, is an essentiality. It's something which is required to the last mile of where the country is. And the whole disruption happened, you know, especially in a whole supply chain side of it. Now, how was how did the industry basically reacted? How did you guys ensure that you were able to still ensure that the people get access? Was there, and what kind of a regulatory challenges which faced? And going ahead, as we know, there is a kind of a new world normal we are talking about. You know, people's behavior might change, people's buying behavior might change, the access aspects might change. So how do you see the industry and the government working together in the future? And what do you think would be really required for the industry to ensure that it continues to deliver what it has been doing till now?
Yeah, I think a great question. And in fact, we all have experienced, you know, across industry, you know, the situation last March onwards. And I must say, and I must, as an industry, as a Mondelez, I really want to compliment the government. I mean, coming to the point, that where suddenly everything was on a lockdown, and nobody had even thought about it, right? We had no plan B for this. And we were just, each one of us were learning and looking for information, looking for government orders, uh, not just the external stakeholders. In fact, even within the company, it was quite a situation, I can call it panic literally. But yes, we had put our head down, what has to be done now from day one. And I was, me handling government affairs, I really want to compliment the government. I mean, they were active 24/7. I mean, I have myself made calls at 10 o'clock in the night, WhatsApp call to principal secretaries, chief secretaries of the state, and they have responded. And I mean, great amount of work and support by the government to the industry. So that is definitely, and I really see that there has been a change in attitude, by the government, and where even bits and pieces the lockdown is continuing, but I see that there's a huge amount of collaboration down even at the district level. Generally, to begin with, the district officer or the police thana guy would not really understand what is a MHA notification. But gradually, I think the entire system has evolved, has matured, and I think they have understood the importance of, industry goods, food and food products reaching to the consumers. I think this is a great step forward, and I really hope this continues. Internally, I would say, the supply chain has been continuously evolving, more so, and it has, adjusted, found new ways of working, recently. For example, movement of goods in India. Earlier, the preferred option was road, but now I think Mondelez and a lot of other companies are exploring the options of railway and waterways within India. So for example, if you have to go to Gujarat, to Chennai, you can use the water option, which is a good, earlier we never explored. So I would say companies also are learning new ways of working and ensuring that the goods reach their consumers. And even there has been a little change or relook at the various distribution models. For example, earlier a distributor was supplying to a limited area or a limited number of retailers. But now, as time required, they are open to supply products even beyond their jurisdiction. Now, in all this entire ecosystem, I have seen e-commerce also playing a very integral part of our supply chains. And I would like to stop here. If you want me to speak on innovation, happy to speak. Again, that's a very, very interesting topic too, but I leave it with you, Aman. Thanks.
No, I think, Garima, I would love to hear from you on the innovation side before I come to Ishteyaque on the whole the supply chain part, because I personally believe that innovation as an aspect, and innovation is across in an industry could happen across, not just product part of it. So I did hear from Ishteyaque, but would love to hear from you, and then we'll come back to the supply chain with Ishteyaque. He could, he can take that next couple of minutes to prepare his answer.
So essentially, Ishteyaque had give a very good example of mangoes, So if you innovate, essentially, companies would innovate to ensure, and it makes a business sense when it sells well with the consumer, right? So while you innovate, you also have to keep in mind the taste buds of the consumer, right? We invested huge amounts of money and came out, in line with 30% less sugar. Well, it is doing very good in the market, but again, not all consumers would like to go for it, right? So while you do innovate, and while companies regularly invest in R&D and innovation, but at the same time, you have to be so much mindful of the tastes of the consumers. And today's consumers are very, very picky. So, one has to be super cautious there. And that's where I would like to stop.
Thank you, Garima. I think, there is that kind of a balance required between the taste buds, because I think all of us as a consumer really try to go on the taste buds side when it should be a balance between the taste and the nutrition in an aspect of it. And especially as we realized, and what even Ishteyaque, you talked about, the fact that immunity is now becoming a kind of a core thought process. Now, I don't think a year back people would have thought so much about immunity, but this whole COVID has, brought in much more sensitization on that particular subject. But Ishta, coming from you side, again, as a large organization, from a supply chain perspective, how do you think what's happening? And also, besides the companies and government, who are the other stakeholders who you think is playing a role? Let's say look at from e-commerce companies, what is the role they are playing, and then and how are you guys collaborating together to ensure the product gets accessible to the last mile?
Okay, let me just take half a second to talk about the taste bud, because this is a very interesting topic. And oftentimes many of us over sort of intellectualize on our products of food and beverages, but just think about it. Why some of us like mango? Do we know how many vitamins and minerals and all of those things are there in the mango? You like it because you like the taste and you eat it, right? Somebody likes to eat oranges, somebody likes cake, somebody likes cookies or whatever. Most of us as consumer mostly consume products for taste. It's important, and that's where this real play of, what is good and what is tasty, that you bring both of these things together. That's the sweet spot that all of us as a food manufacturer always try to accomplish. Now, coming to the supply chain, it is, again, as I said, food and beverages businesses are very simple businesses, because we actually satiate a very simple and fundamental need of a consumer. I always keep on saying so. And we realize that one of the very simple thing that we have done over last 25 years of our existence here is that we have built our operation and supply chain network practically in every part of the country. We've got 54 plants, okay, which are owned by our bottlers or us. Then there are obviously, there are third-party manufacturers, a number of other people who manufacture for us. If you put all of these things together, we almost have a plant in every nook and corner of the country. Now, in a situation like COVID-19, where we've had containment zone in some parts of the country, and then those places have gotten better. Now there are other parts of the country which are more infected. If you really go through this entire cycle, this entire expanse of our network of supply chain, network of manufacturing, and the last mile distribution is something that really came very handy. And that's in many ways, and I've written on this issue extensively. We also, as part of PAFI and part of our company, we interact significantly with NITI Aayog and other policy bodies of the country. And this is one thing which we have been talking about, that if we really want to make India an Atmanirbhar or vocal for local in all those initiatives that we are taking, it's very important that we really go and expand our industrial footprint across the country. We cannot have majority of our consumption and production only, confined to the urban centers. And this was a great learning for us. I can tell you, this came, it almost came as a natural advantage. And I can tell you, except for first few days that Garima was referring to, obviously, nobody in the government or anywhere else really knew about it as much as because this was a new sort of phenomenon. Except for first few days, we could really come back to our businesses and, maintain our supply chain, distribution, production, and everything in a reasonably seamless manner. Of course, there have been challenges, there were restrictions in terms of how many people can come to the plant, what are the protocols and all of that. And touch wood, because safety and people safety is such an important aspect for us as a company, we have taken some of those measures very, very early, much ahead of even before the lockdown happened, and that has really paid us some good dividends. So I think we were in a pretty decent shape.
Thanks, Ishteyaque. So let me, come Pankaj to, also from his perspective to talk on this particular subject. And, with that, we're going to sort of pause on this conversation and start looking from the Q&A from the audience. So Pankaj, both from an innovation perspective, you are the one who started talking about from the whole food fortification which Cargill is doing, but also from a supply chain. And as I understand, Cargill is present across huge food chain. So from your perspective, what is the kind of the challenges which you faced from a supply chain, and also as you look in the future, as we do a bit of a crystal ball gazing, do you think there is a need for a certain kind of regulatory changes, or there's a kind of a support which you think needs to come from the government to ensure that the future which we're talking about, and as Ishteyaque said, we don't something like this happen again, we don't get caught unaware. So what's your view on that?
So Aman, let me first check. Am I audible, and is it fine now?
No, Pankaj, I think you are audible, but I think we are having a bit of an echo again, if I'm not mistaken. It's not just me.
So my apologies. So I don't know what is the issue. I haven't been able to fix it. So would you want Ishteyaque or Garima to take this, because I don't want the audience to really
Yeah, no, I think
feel challenged with this.
I think we'll have to have a pause here, but I think Ishteyaque and Garima have already said. So let's see if we can still correct this audio before we end the session today. I would have loved to, but I will do an offline conversation to get your answers on this bit. But I think just to sort of ensure that we shift the gears and move towards the questions which are coming in, and in case Pankaj, we are able to sort of take care of the echo, we will come back to you, because I don't want to leave you without without hearing from you. So I think as the questions are coming in, let me just start. The first one of Ishteyaque is for you specially, so it's marked to you. So let me ask you the question. So the question is, Coke, and especially Diet Coke, has a strong perception that it is bad for health, that it is carcinogenic. How do you counter this perception and share steps you have taken to change or correct this narrative?
It is questions like this that keep me employed. So in a way, there was a time when I would get overwhelmed by these questions, but now I'm happy that people ask these questions, because that keep me employed and keep me relevant to the business. There's absolutely no truth in this. And the reason why I say so is not because I work for Coca-Cola. It is because I have children who drink Coca-Cola, and they've been drinking Coca-Cola when I was not in Coca-Cola. So that's where we were talking about the trust. What happens in today's world is we are unfortunately fed with a lot of unwanted information, and they're available. And this is what we call information overkill. Now, science is very clear. The science around low and no calorie sweeteners is, I think there are very few ingredients in the world that has undergone the kind of scientific research that these ingredients have undergone. And it's very clear in terms of what its impact on your body is, what good it does, what good it does not do, and all of that. So I don't think that there's absolutely anything to really worry about. One of the reasons why we sort of, learn to live with these kind of myth is because, you see, myths are often thrown at people who are big, people who are relevant, people who are significant. Coca-Cola is one of the most loved brands in the world, and we've remained so for the last 132 years. And that is what keeps us also very grounded with the fact that there will be things that will be said about us, which is not very charitable. But through our communications, through our transparent way of putting our things out in the open. For example, if you take a can of Coke or a bottle of Coke, for last almost 7 years, we write down the calories in a manner in which it is not to be written according to the laws of the land. There was no need for us to do that. But we take some extra step to go and tell our consumer that, look, you're making an informed choice. And it is important for you to know what choices you're making. I can only tell you one thing, which is probably a kind of a wisdom that my parents have passed on to me and I pass on to my children, is everything in moderation is right. Don't overindulge yourself with anything. You know, I mean, any food, anything, you don't overindulge yourself. So, and that's the only sort of a caution I will give to anybody.
Thanks, Ishteyaque. I hope the answer, the question got answered. Let me move to the next question, which we have. And meanwhile, I will encourage our attendees to use the Q&A.
Aman, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Pankaj,
Is it better?
I think this is much better. I don't know echo. So before I move to the next question, so Pankaj, I do want to sort of hear from you on your views about the supply chain, especially that part of it. So while I may not see you from a video, but would love to hear your point of view, and then I'll come back to the question part.
So this is in the context of the supply chain COVID-19?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So as Garima and Ishteyaque, mentioned, initial few days were obviously a bit of a challenge for all of us. And the reason was probably there were about 1,000+ notifications which flowed over a period of 2 months. These notifications were coming out of Ministry of Home Affairs, going to the state chief secretaries. They were issuing in turn their notifications, which were finally going to the district collectors and the SDMs. And in any case, there hasn't been any precedence. So obviously, the people on ground were a bit challenged in terms of what to do. But specifically in the case of Cargill, the good part is that we are covered under the essential services. So within 48 hours, we were up and running with all our plants. We have about 11 plants across the length and breadth of the country. All of them except for one bio-industrial plant was operating within 48 hours. And I would have to place this on record. The kind of support we have received right across level, state level, or even at the district level, it has been unprecedented. We haven't seen this kind of support. What we have also seen is that they have gone that extra mile and they kept the communication channel open with the industry to get real-time feedback and make modifications as and when if needed. So that was exceptional. And the other good part is that it's continuing. It's not that the government is now, said, okay, we have done our job and you just continue with your work. What we are also seeing is that the government is trying to convert this crisis into an opportunity, which again is something which we will give it to the government and specifically in agriculture, we have seen 3 ordinances which the government has brought in, which hopefully should transform the agriculture and the food sector in the years to come. So that's a good part, that they are trying to convert the crisis into opportunity.
Thanks, Pankaj, and thanks for your view. And I wanted to ensure that we get it. Coming back, shifting to the Q&A, the numbers of questions are going up. So the next one, and I think it's open to any of you, so any of you can take. The question is, how is the food industry dealing with the challenges arising in the rural sector and helping in easing the rural distress in these unprecedented times? So Garima, Pankaj, any of you want to take this particular one? Because the previous one for Ishteyaque.
So let me try to address it. I think one of the things we should be happy about, that one of the green shoots in the Indian economy is driven by agriculture or by the rural economy. Last year, agriculture grew by about 3.7%, and this year it is projected to grow by more than 3%. And this is when the overall economy is going to contract by 5%, right? So the rural economy is a standout, and companies like us, a lot of us, and Ishteyaque talked about 50 odd manufacturing locations across the length and the breadth of the
country, a lot of our operations are in the interiors, in the rural or in the hinterland. We do employ, people from the rural areas. So hopefully, as and when the demand comes back, because there has been a demand destruction, but as and when the demand comes back, we should be able to, contribute to uplift the rural economy.
Thanks, Pankaj. I think that did get answer. I think the next question is something which, while it's addressed, Ishteyaque, to you from Coke perspective, but I think all three of you might have a point of view. Even I think Garima and I was talking about this subject a couple of days back. So the question here is, Coca-Cola was named one of the most polluting brand contributing to plastic waste. Will the company take any step to reduce the use of plastic bottles and move towards a sustainable option? So, Ishteyaque, do you want to take, and then Garima, Pankaj, if you want to talk, because this is not just from Coke. I think this is an issue which is for everyone. So,
Sure.
A quick answers would be really great.
Yeah. So, the reason why there are some people who call us the biggest polluters because we are the biggest company. So we provide the maximum number of drinks on this planet, and therefore, our footprint there is no doubt about the fact, is large. Now, how do really you address this entire thing? And that's one thing which I think all of us on this panel and across the world really need to understand. All of us have got our own footprints as individuals, as companies. So there are only 2-3 ways that you can reduce it. One, of course, is that there is a clear reduction in your own footprint, right? So we have a very, very basic and a very simple policy around this. We call it the idea of a world without waste. This is something we launched about 3 years back. And the reason why we did so is because we also recognize that we have the responsibility to, as a market leader, to do some of those things. It has got 3 elements. First element is the design element, which is the question that you've asked. We, along with every possible research and development at humans capability, we are trying to find newer solutions to really bring down the footprint of plastics in our operations, whether it is through lightweighting, whether it is, really going and advocating about what we call the recycled PET in our packaging and all of that. You'll be surprised to know that in India, the plastic bottles in which you find the Cokes and the waters and all of that is recycled about 90%. Many of us may not be aware. But the fact is that there are more and more packages. Of course, as we go into that entire ecosystem, we have to find better ways to recycle all the packages that the food products or any other products really carry into. So therefore, collection is an important part. So that's our second pillar. And third important pillar is about partnership. Whether we do that partnership with a municipal corporation or an NGO or rack pickers or United Nations, environment programs or UNDPs and others. Right now, we are in India alone. We have got about 27 cities in which we run a program which is called the material recovery facilities, and almost 70% of our total waste that is getting generated is being recovered and recycled, either through our franchise bottler or through our company-owned bottlers. So in fact, there's a lot of work that's happening in that area. I would really encourage you to maybe visit our website and reach out to us. But there's a lot that is happening and there's a lot that needs to happen. But I completely, as a consumer and a citizen of this planet, share your concern that we all have to come together and find solutions.
Thank you, Ishteyaque. And really, I think the fact that each of us has a footprint, and we need to look at an individual level also, what kind of a footprint are we leaving on the environment, on the planet. But Garima, I know you and I talked about this subject, so I believe you are at the head of the committee at
Plastic committee.
Plastic committee. So I want to sort of, to also for you to sort of provide a perspective on this subject per se, because as you know, it's a larger issue per se, and it needs addressing. And I think all of you are doing some bit of it. So
sure.
I want to take your view on this.
Sure. So very quickly, first, I would like to speak on behalf of Mondelez, because the plastic waste management rule came in 2016, where they introduced the concept of EPR. But Mondelez in 2012 took an initiative that from 12, taking 12 as a base year, till 20, we will reduce 70,000 metric tons of plastic from our products globally. And very happy to share that as on date, starting from 2012, as in today, we have managed to eliminate 65,000 metric tons of plastic waste from our products globally. And definitely India is a part contributes there as well. Now, having said that, I would now speak from an industry perspective because I also chair the plastic committee. We have industry which are now, as Ishteyaque also mentioned, and Pankaj's company Cargill is also doing. We all large companies, even medium scale companies, are all now registering with CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, for doing EPR. And we have our EPR targets fixed for the year. We engage with various producer responsibility organizations, work with the government. Everything is happening, but at the same time, I would say a very important piece and a critical piece is, how we as consumers do the source segregation. Without source segregation, the entire EPR mechanism, the entire, government policy of handling the plastic waste will not really sail through. Once the source segregation is done, and all of us sitting here are consumers, and we do segregate waste in our home. If we do the source segregation correctly across India, the most of the larger piece of the chunk of the challenge is solved. So this is where, seeing the interest of time, it's already going to be 4 now. I'll stop here. But yes, it's a longish debate. A lot can be discussed, shared, and industry is committed to this. As Ishteyaque also mentioned, we as an industry are committed to reduce, reuse, and recycle plastic, because as on date, there is no alternative available for a multi-layered plastic, because again, the hygiene, the safety part of it. We have to ensure that the food reaches our consumers in the best possible form. And there is no alternative today. So we have to learn to manage the plastic. And that's where all companies like us are dedicated, committed to it. But we would really need the support of consumers for source segregation. Thank you.
Thanks, Garima. I think, as I said, we just got about 2 minutes remaining. So last question, and any of you can answer. The question is largely about, again, labeling and the transparency around it. And the question is that going forward, our company is working towards a more transparent labeling. And also, is there a way where there could be a single, maybe a web platform where every company has put its product along with the nutritional information or nutritional value, so that the consumer could compare and see everything at one place? So
do you want me to take it?
Please
Aman?
go ahead, Garima. Please
Very
go ahead.
quickly. So the labeling and display regulations are being discussed by FSSAI. It is under consideration. The draft was out. Industry has given inputs to it, and the models are being discussed. It is with the scientific panel of FSSAI. And we definitely want, and I think the entire industry is party to it, and FSSAI has been very collaborative in this entire process, very transparent. And yes, we all are jointly working towards it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Garima. I think with that, I would like to thank all my panelists. We want to ensure that we are on time. And thanks a lot. I definitely enjoyed this whole conversation. Some of the points were really exciting. I hope our attendees have enjoyed it. With that, let me pass it back to Anubhuti.
Thank you, Aman. This was indeed an enlightening hour, and I'm sure all our listeners are going back with a lot of learnings from all of you today. I thank our panelists, Garima, Ishteyaque, Pankaj, for their time and for their insights today. Thank you to all our attendees for taking the time out this afternoon. The next edition of Policy Dialogue is scheduled for Friday, 4th of September. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at RepTodayMag for speaker and registration details. See you soon, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Garima. Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Ishteyaque.
Thanks.
Thank you.